Tonight on Philly Sports Spotlight, Andy Reid's last few seasons in Philly may not have been great, but it wasn't all bad during Big Red's run. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett suing the NCAA, calling its penalties against Penn State capricious and arbitrary. And fire up the Zamboni, the NHL lockout is over, and it's game on. Hello there and welcome once again to Philly Sports Spotlight. I'm Phil Andrews and plenty to talk about on the NFL coaching front. Andy Reid fired, then hired. More on that in just a moment because we would certainly be remiss if we didn't quickly touch on the end of the 113-day NHL lockout. The news coming early Sunday morning following 16 hours of negotiations. The owners and players agreeing on a new tentative 10-year deal. We'll take a little closer look at this story a little later on in the show. Of course, our big story on tonight's edition of Philly Sports Spotlight is that 5-day period, the period that saw Andy Reid fired by Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie, then hired by Chiefs owner Clark Hunt to become the Kansas City Chiefs' new head coach. Video here at the airport, he and his wife Tammy arriving in Kansas City. Reid was supposed to visit with the Arizona Cardinals next, but Hunt never let him get out of town. Following the news that Reid had signed a new contract with Kansas City, Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie had this comment, this statement: "Congratulations to Clark Hunt and the Kansas City Chiefs for hiring a good man and a good coach. We wish Andy, Tammy, and their family all the best in their new home." Of course, that statement in stark contrast to the press conference that Mr. Lurie held just the day after the Eagles wrapped up a dismal 4-12 season with an embarrassing 42-7 loss to the New York Giants.
We've decided to make a change, as you all know, and we're going to be saying goodbye to the winningest coach in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. That's the main point. Having worked side by side with him for 14 years, this is a gem of a person and incredibly dedicated to making the Eagles the franchise that we have been. We're used to winning, and we're used to winning big. It's rare that we're not in the playoffs or playing in the championship game, and that's what we got to return to. And then for our incredible fan base that have been so supportive, every ounce of our effort and my effort goes towards not only having that excellence of being in the playoffs, but the ultimate goal of winning a championship for Philadelphia. I've been doing a lot of research over the last month or so, and that is done meticulously and in great detail. And we do have a very, very defined list of candidates, and we hope to be able to meet with some of them as soon as possible. And I think, again, though, and I know I'll be asked this question, it's better to find the right leader than it is to make the fastest decision.
Once again, Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie now joining us on the set of Philly Sports Spotlight. Former Eagle tight end and editor-in-chief, so to speak, executive producer, Ken Dunek of Jersey Man Magazine. And, I got to ask you, Ken, what were your thoughts on the expeditious movement between the time that Andy got fired and hired? I mean, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, we knew it was a fait accompli that Andy was going to go. We talked about it several shows ago. I was sure he was going to get a job. I really wasn't sure he was going to get a job that quickly. Having said that, the Chiefs are a pretty good spot for him. First of all, they have the #1 pick in the draft, so Andy's going to get a shot at a very good player, and it looks like they may need a quarterback there. The other thing is, because Kansas City has been so poor in recent years, that they're going to give him a chance to succeed. He's not going to have the heat that they had on him here in the recent years in Philly. So Andy will grow into the job, and I think he's got a chance to do a good job there.
Okay, now you heard Jeffrey Lurie say that they weren't going to be hasty in finding their new head coach. They're going to take their time, go through the candidates, and that process has already begun. And you actually have a couple of guys, about 5 guys, you would love to see here, or guys you thought would be a good fit here. Tell us about your first candidate.
Yeah, I put together a list, and these are the guys that I wanted. Some of them have taken their name out of consideration already, but if you ask me for my wish list, at the very top is Bill O'Brien. Bill, who chose to remain at Penn State, as we all know, was my #1 choice. Tough, resilient guy, has NFL experience, having been with the New England Patriots as their offensive coordinator. If you remember, he got into that sideline brush-up with Tom Brady, so you know he's got some quinones there to take on the all-star quarterback there, but O'Brien would have been my first choice as the Eagles head coach.
And there were a lot of Eagles fans. I know a lot of you had mixed reactions because a lot of people were happy that he took the job at Penn State and did such a great job this year, and were kind of like hesitant as to whether he should leave right away and come to Philly, so he didn't. Now, let's talk about your next candidate.
Of course, John Gruden. Everybody knows John Gruden, the famous Chucky from Monday Night Football. He's a successful coach, a Super Bowl winning coach. Unfortunately for the Eagles, they won it with Tampa Bay the year they knocked the Eagles out of the playoffs. But, he's got a cushy job with ESPN. He makes multiple $1 million per year, and I think it's a lifestyle issue that he wants to remain with television. But I wouldn't rule him out from coaching in the future. He's just too young.
All right, now your final three candidates all have ties to Philadelphia or the Eagles, if you will.
Not a lot of people remember that Bill Cowher used to be an Eagle linebacker back in the early 80s. And he's won a Super Bowl with the Steelers, of course. There are, again, lifestyle issues that are keeping him on the sideline. A lot of these guys don't want to work 68 hours a week. They've already made their money. They're making a nice living in television. And for that reason alone, these guys, really are not in a hurry to get back into coaching.
Well, the next guy on your list was actually the head coach at Temple one time.
Certainly a guy with Philadelphia ties, Bruce Arians, a friend of mine actually. Bruce got me my first job in television as an analyst with Temple football back in the late 80s. Great offensive coordinator, won a Super Bowl ring with the Steelers. I think he would be a great choice to at least have the Eagles take a look at.
Okay, by the way, over the weekend, of course, he was rushed to the hospital prior to that Colts loss to the Baltimore Ravens. He is okay today. He had headaches and nausea, but, he's 60 years old, and he would be the oldest coach that the Eagles have ever gone after. And the last guy on your list is actually a guy that was a teammate of yours not once but twice.
That's right. I played with John Bunning with both the Eagles and the Stars. He's got head coaching experience at the University of North Carolina. And a few people remember that he was Dick Vermeil's co-defensive coordinator with the Rams when they won the Super Bowl several years ago. So, bring back the prodigal son and let John Bunning have a chance at running the Eagles.
All right, so those are your 5 picks. Guys, we know there's several of them not coming here. There's a couple of other names that are being bandied around. Let's take a real quick look at this list. We have Broncos offensive coordinator Mike McCoy, Bengals offensive coordinator Jay Gruden, Seahawks defensive coordinator Gus Bradley, and Oregon head coach Chip Kelly, who has already taken his name out of consideration. He's going back to Oregon. I'll have my thoughts on Chip Kelly coming up in the next break. I'll tell you a little bit something about him. During Andy Reid's 14-year tenure here in Philadelphia, this is your trivia question for the night, so get out your thinking caps. There were several changes around the National Football League. Do you know exactly how many head coaching changes there were during Andy's 14-year run? We'll have that and much more coming up after the break. Also, we'll tell you about the top 5 moments. Ken's going to dissect the top 5 best moments of the Andy Reid era, so grab yourself a pop drink and some popcorn. Hint, hint.